Welcome back to this video intro of Oh, the Stories We Tell. I'm Chris Templeton. Really pleased that you're here for episode 5, where we talk about the space. I'm going to start by reading you a quote from somebody named Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist who was in the concentration camps during World War II and somehow survived it. And after he was out, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And my favorite quote from the book, and one of my favorite quotes in life, is this: "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." The thing that's so fascinating to me about this, when you put it into the model of Oh, the Stories We Tell, is that basically what he's saying is this space, depending on how much space there is, has the ability to change our life. If we're stuck with no space, in essence, we're living by default, and we don't have the ability to create a response that serves us, especially in areas that we struggle. So if I'm upset with my boss and I don't have any space, I feel like a victim. I tell stories that don't serve me about my boss's behavior, and I am stuck in that place until I recognize that I can create that space. I can open that space. And so just like in the last episode, we talked about this idea of a line, am I telling a story that serves me or not? That creates space. Just the questions, the 3 questions: what's the story I'm telling myself? Is it serving me in the moment? And is there a more authentic story that I can tell? Is another way to create that space. And so think about the people that you know or yourself, how they torture themselves in certain areas of their lives, or maybe all of their lives. There's some people that are stuck above the line telling stories that don't serve them about everything, about who they are, how they're not good enough, they are struggling all the time, they don't make enough money, they don't have good relationships, they hate their work. I mean, we can all think of people that have a good set of stories above that line, stories that do not serve them. When I look at these 3 questions and I think about that line, I'm creating space. And the thing that's so fascinating, Viktor Frankl's book was titled Man's Search for Meaning. And here's what I think, one of the things that I think is so important about this is that if there's a line with stories that don't serve us and stories that do serve us, if what we want is meaning in our lives, if what we're looking for is to feel centered and grounded in our lives, to feel like our lives are worthwhile, that I am valuable in and of myself and can be valuable to the people that I surround myself with, my coworkers, my boss, my partner, my children, my friends, meaning is below the line. We find meaning below the line. What's also really interesting to me is that above the line is the catalyst for so much of that meaning. When I'm able to take a story about something that I struggle with and move it from a really negative place down below that line to a place that's authentic, where I can tell a story about how something happened to me as a kid, as an example. It was really bad and I didn't like it, but what I've been able to do is to create a story that serves me about that, how that situation was not a good situation, but what I've been able to do is to create meaning by telling an authentic story. Yes, it was something that I never want to happen to me or anybody else, and as a result of that happening, I've been able to figure out, for me, greater meaning and to tell a story that serves me so that I'm not above the line, a victim of the story, but instead below the line in solution mode with a sense of agency that I can change the situation. And I start by changing the story, and that starts by creating that space that Viktor Frankl talks about. So one of the things that I'll talk about a lot is that space. And so if you have no space, you're living by default in whatever the situation is that you're telling a story about. And typically, those are stories that don't serve us and they feel icky. They put us in a place of fear, in a place of being a victim. And so when there's no space, I don't even think that I have an ability to move myself below the line. But when I start asking these questions and I start internalizing the line and the rest of the model, which we'll get to in the next episodes, I start to create space. And so one of the things that's also really important to keep in mind is this model, Oh, the Stories We Tell, is not designed to be a quick fix. This is about figuring out how to create a meaningful journey toward what I want. It's not to be rich, have everything that I want overnight, and then we move on, and everything's great from there on, because that virtually works for almost nobody, and certainly not from the standpoint of having things, that sort of thing. It's not that those are bad, that it's bad to have things, a nice car and to travel and all those great things, but that when I experience those things from below the line, there's far more meaning. So when I can take and create space, I create a process that I'm more present for, that I feel like I have agency. And as I create that space, I also create the ability to tell stories that serve me and to move me below the line. And now, instead of being angry at my boss and why he doesn't do what I want him to do, blah, 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 now I'm saying, I wonder if there are things that I can do that will help my boss to not want to have that behavior, and for me to feel better on a day-to-day basis, regardless of whether he has that behavior. I'm not going to model that behavior with the people that I work with. I'm going to be the person that helps other people to talk them down from my boss's behavior, that sort of thing, to find a way to deal with my children in a way that serves me and serves them, understands why they have their bad behavior, but also allows me not to be in a situation where we're both above the line, resisting each other, getting more and more mad at each other, and instead, as I get better and better at creating this space, not always, more and more often being below that line, and then having the ability to address my children in a more authentic way, in a way that serves them, and they begin to come down below the line too. The other thing that's just a good side note is to recognize that we all go up and down above the line all day long, moment to moment. And when I recognize that, I stop also generalizing, I create space and stop generalizing that I'm always in a bad place, and that I have the ability to change who and what I am in terms of how I perceive what's going on within me and around me by telling stories that serve me. So also understanding that everybody does that. When I understand that, hey, everybody goes above and below the line, and my job is to not follow them above the line and to help them have be a good influence in helping them to come below the line, major meaning starts to come up. And we start to realize not only do we have the ability to internally tell stories that serve us and to understand ourselves and those around us, and that creates meaning, again, coming from a catalyst of things that don't serve us above the line to below the line, where we have meaning. It doesn't mean we're always going to stay there. We may jump up above the line based on something where we just couldn't create that space in the moment, but we then have the ability, even at a later date, to change that. The other thing that's so important to keep in mind is we can change a story anytime, whether it happened as a kid, 10, 20 years ago, yesterday, or just now. I have the ability to change my stories from any time about the past, what I'm fearful of for the future, and to get those below the line so that what I'm doing is, again, I'm not driving myself crazy. I've moved from problem mode to solution mode, and I'm able to tell stories that serve me, having that space between stimulus and response. I hope that helped. And I'm looking forward to our next episode where we add emotion to the model, because guess what? We really haven't talked about emotion in any meaningful way. So I hope you'll join us in the next episode. Thanks so much. One last thing. Would you do me a favor and give me a thumbs up on this video? And also, if you want to see more, hit subscribe. If you want to see them right away, click on the bell. And then please, please feel free to give me any feedback that you have. More than anything else, I want to hear what people think, to answer their criticisms. And that's a great way to do it, is by leaving a message. Finally, you can find me at ohthestorieswetell.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Oh the Stories We Tell, and also at patreon.com/Oh the Stories We Tell if you want to support me financially and also have the ability to see what's going on behind the curtains, which may be fun, who knows. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much.